Okay, everyone, this is my audience member. This is my husband, Darren. I'm going to pause the video real quick and we're going to swap spots so I can present how to make the perfect pie crust. Okay, everyone, I'm back. So, what do you guys think of when I say what is the most traditional American dessert? I hope you said pie. According to Taste of Home magazine, nothing is more American than apple pie. Unless it's cherry, banana cream, pumpkin, or even sweet potato pie. But nonetheless, no matter what the kind, no good pie can start without the perfect crust. So what I'm going to show you guys today is how to make the perfect pie crust. Now, I learned how to bake from my great-grandma and also my mom. It's something that we've always done together. And as I've told you guys before, baking is my favorite hobby. It is my happy place. It is what calms me down when I'm stressed out. Just a little bit of everything. So I just kind of want to show you how to make a perfect pie crust every time. And pie is so versatile that knowing how to make the perfect pie crust is not only delicious, but it's, also a good skill to know in life. So, to start a pie crust, you first have to have the perfect ingredients. So my pie crust consists of 5 ingredients. I have flour, sugar, salt, butter, and water. So with the flour, you can use different types of flour. You can use all-purpose flour, you can use wheat flour, you can even use the pastry flour. I like to use all-purpose flour. Just because I use all-purpose flour for everything that I'm doing, so it's just the staple that I have in my home. Salt and sugar, you don't use a lot of it, but it's what adds the flavor to your pie crust. The butter. The butter is the fat that you use in your pie crust. So you can use anything from butter, you can use lard, you can use oil, you can even use vegetable shortening. But nice cold butter just gives a nice good flavor. Last ingredient is 1/4 cup of water. The water is the moisture that holds all of your pie crust together. So what we're going to do to start off with is we are going to start by adding our dry ingredients into our bowl. So we're going to first measure out. My recipe calls for 2½ cups of flour, but we're only going to put 2 cups in now. The 1/2 cup will come in later. So let me go ahead. You always want to make sure that you have the perfect amount. So here's 1 cup. Too much flour can make it crumbly. Too little flour doesn't hold together. So there's 2 cups. Next, we're going to add the rest of our dry ingredients. So we're going to have a tablespoon of sugar. I'm just going to measure out a tablespoon here. Like I said, just make sure it's nice and even. And then we're going to use a teaspoon of salt. So I'm just going to pour out a teaspoon of salt. Okay, perfect. So the order of the ingredients makes a huge difference. You always want to make sure to put your dry ingredients in first, and then add in your lard or your butter or your moisture. It's really the consistency that you're going for that holds that pie crust together. So the order that you put them in is very crucial. So next, what we're going to do, now that we have our dry ingredients in our bowl, is we're going to add in our butter. So I have nice cold butter that I just got out of the fridge. So what we're going to do, and you'll need 1 cup, which is 2 sticks. So we're going to do something called cutting in the butter. So cutting in the butter is just a way of saying to, make it into small pieces very quickly so the butter doesn't melt, because we definitely don't want the butter to melt. So first I'm just going to cut it into chunks and throw it in my bowl. Make sure I do the next stick. If I can get it open, that is. So we'll go ahead and we'll get that put in there. Okay. So to cut in the butter, we're going to use what's called a pastry cutter. So it's just kind of got some blades on it, and you're just going to kind of cut through all of your ingredients to make sure that they're mixed really well. You're going to want the consistency to be like large clumps by the time you're done. So we're going to go ahead and cut in the butter. And this is a lengthy process, so it's not something that's super duper quick, but it's very important. And it is kind of messy. I kind of get flour everywhere, so don't mind my mess. This will be delicious in the end, I promise. It does take a few minutes. So you just keep going around the bowl. Okay. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's kind of clumpy. Like it's all mixed in. I've cut the butter in, but it's still got nice big chunks of butter in it. So as I mentioned earlier, my recipe calls for 2.5 cups of flour. As you saw before, I only put 2 cups of flour in. So we're going to go ahead and add our last 1/2 cup of flour. Okay, make sure it's leveled off once again. Add it in. And then we're just going to use, you can use a wooden knife, you can use a metal knife, a plastic knife, whatever, or not knife, excuse me, spoon. This is a spoon, guys. So we're going to go ahead and use this spoon and just kind of, don't overmix it. Overmixing can really be a factor in anything that you're doing. If you overmix, you can kind of kill, especially if you're working with breads and different things like that, you can kill the yeast and different things. And so if you always want to make sure just not to overmix. So just make sure it's lightly mixed in there. So I added my butter, I added my flour, I added my sugar, my salt, everything's in there except for the water. So this is the last ingredient we're going to add. So I have 1/4 cup of cold water. I just got this out of our refrigerator, so it's nice cold water. I'm going to go ahead and add this water in there. And once again, I'm going to continue to use my wooden spoon, and I'm going to just stir it in. I'm going to try to get it as mixed together as possible. So it comes to a point sometimes where a spoon just isn't doing the trick. So I like to use the spoon for as long as I can, but it gets to a certain point, I just need to use my hands. So I do suggest using your hands, but make sure that your hands are clean before you do this. Nobody wants dirty hands in their pie crust. So I did wash my hands before I started this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to you're kind of just squishing it together, but you can feel it. Look, it's starting to hold together. So you just continue to squish it all together. It's a messy process, guys. I'm not going to lie. But regardless of the mess, it will be delicious in the end. Okay, we're really starting to hold together now. Okay. Look at this. So I have this big chunk of pie crust. So together we've used all of our ingredients. We've mixed it together appropriately. Now the next step is to roll it out. So I have a pastry sheet here, which I don't know why because my table's already a mess, but I like to use the pastry sheet. And you just want to lightly flour the surface. If you don't flour it, then it tends to stick and it rips your pie dough, and it just makes for a very hectic situation. So once again, I'm going to knead it just a little bit longer. And I'm actually going to break it into 2. Like I said, top crust, bottom crust. Even if you're not doing a top crust, bottom crust pie, you still need to break it in 2. Otherwise, it's very difficult to roll out that whole chunk of pie dough. So I'm going to go ahead and start rolling out my dough. I'm going to flour my rolling pin. And you can use any rolling pin that you have. I just have a wooden one. I know there's ceramic ones, there's metal ones, there's wooden ones. Whatever you have in your kitchen that you want to use, go for it. So like I said, you're always going to want to roll, start in the center and roll out. Start in the center and roll out. Start in the center and roll out. And every couple of rolls, you want to flip it just to prevent from sticking. If it does feel a little sticky, sprinkle a little more flour on there and continue rolling. So you're just going to kind of want to roll, like I said, from the center out, making sure that you're trying to get as much of a rounded shape as possible, because most pie dishes are round. So it's very important that we try to get it into a round shape. So, continue to roll here. Okay, perfect. So, I hope you guys can see this, but this is my pie crust. So it is nice and thin. That is what you want. You don't want it too thick because then it takes too long to cook and the rest of your pie gets done before your pie crust does. It's nice and thin. It held together nicely. It didn't crack anywhere. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it in my pie dish and then make my favorite pie. Like I've told you before, my favorite pie is cherry, and cherries are just coming into season. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and make a cherry pie. That's a whole nother video for another day. But I did want you guys to see to make a perfect pie crust. As long as you follow those simple instructions and follow the ingredients, you can make a perfect pie crust every single time. So in conclusion, what we did is we gathered all of our ingredients. We had flour, sugar, salt, butter, water. So those are our 5 ingredients. Then we mixed our dry ingredients into our bowl. We then cut in the butter, and after we cut in the butter and had those large clumps, we added the rest of our flour, lightly mixed it together. We added in our water, and we completely mixed it in using a spoon. After we used the spoon, then we kneaded it with our hands until the dough all came together and was formed nicely. Once our dough is formed nicely, we put it on our rolling sheet and we rolled it. So like I said, starting from the center, working out, rotating every couple of rolls. So in conclusion, we have a perfect pie crust that you can now use to make any pie that you would like. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. Like I said, baking is my favorite hobby. So as long as I can share a piece of me with all of you guys, I'm happy. So have a good day, guys.